Welcome back to NTV Today, where we are following up different issues, including the state of corruption. We are following up cases at the Anti-Corruption Court, as well as the EACC before the Senate Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, as well as seeing what's happening where the Education Committee of the National Assembly is inspecting the dormitories at Moi Girls School, Nairobi, post the rape case that happened there at the weekend. But now in studio, I'm going to be getting to a conversation just following up on the same state of corruption issues, and I'm joined by Bernard Wakoli, who is a political economist and governance expert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yes, and straight into it, we've been seeing the EACC. They have been talked to about the issues of corruption. We're seeing people in court because of the issue of corruption. We are seeing the president talking tough. Some are even asking, can we make this national disaster, declared national disaster? How is it affecting the economy? One, for instance, in terms of investment, are we finding people shying away from investing in Kenya?
Dan, thank you very much for having me in studio, and welcome viewers. I think in my observation, I feel corruption in Kenya has become very lucrative, despite the fact that Kenya has very serious laws and enough laws to curb this issue. But we see corruption escalating from time to time. And I think with this kind of trend is now becoming like a fashion, is fashionable to talk about corruption, as in young people will feel so good to talk about corruption and being involved in those corrupt scandals. Because you remember when the issue of NYS Season 2 came up, there was these online or social media conversations, and people were like, "Oh, I'm sad because I've not been, I've not been mentioned in the second season of the NYS scandal." So it is now becoming like way of life, fashionable to Kenyans. But having said that, it's very appealing to understand that corruption has very huge negative impact on the economy, starting from the infrastructure, because when these people loot this money, it means that the money that was budgeted for infrastructural development or for economic growth is not going to be utilized for the purposes on which they were budgeted for. So this money enters into people's pocket. Although some people have argued that, some scholars have argued that in Kenya, most of the corrupt individuals reinvest back the money to the economy. But the level of investment of these corrupt individuals to the economy compared to what the government could have done is very minimal, because this is at individual level. Secondly, the issue of corruption also enhances or widens the gap between the poor and the rich, because you realize that the economy is supposed to unify, it's supposed to provide social services, to provide for everybody access to job opportunities. But when people now loot and go to invest on their own, without creating opportunities for the rest of the population, you realize that these people are widening the gap so wide. And also the issue of investor confidence. The cost of doing business in a corrupt system is so huge, because before you start even looking at the capital, you need to look at what you are going to bribe. And in some cases, people bribe even at the rate of 50% of the money they are supposed to invest. So that scares away the potential investors, because nobody wants to just give out money to people to eat at the expense of doing his own business. So there's wide-ranging issues to do with the corruption that we can discuss on and discuss. But again, when you look at the regimes, like during Moi time, the corruption was high, but it was not so much highlighted in media, and it was not brought to the fore by, maybe for the state or whistleblowers. But now the issues are being highlighted. People are aware, people are knowledgeable. Most Kenyans now are educated, tend to know what's going on in the government. And during that time, when the economy was doing so badly because of corruption, well, the banks like World Bank and IMF came up with some strategic measures, like the SAPS, Strategic Adjustment Program, which was supposed to spur the economy. But it took long. Until now, I don't think if those SAPS programs that were initiated by those institutions really picked up. And now we are coming back to these issues of Uhuru regime. And corruption is not necessarily associated with individuals. Let's not say like when done I'm corrupt and you are corrupt, then we are going to be judged, or we are going to be measured on our corrupt dealings. In a regime, in a system, in a governance system, corruption is measured on the level at which the country or the government is able to provide services to its people. So when people will be writing books, will be saying during the Uhuru regime, this is the level of corruption that happened. And it's very much important that the president takes this issue heads on, because it's going to water down his legacy, and people will be writing about how the Uhuru brought down the economy, how things happen. I'll just give you a case study of Indonesia. When President Suharto was the president and he was a dictator between 67 and 98. You know, this is a guy, when he even caught a flu, there was shockwaves within the stock market, because he had like embraced everything. He had amassed all the wealth within the Indonesian government, and everything was revolving around his health. Whenever anything happened to his family, then the economy could go down. You see, we don't want to reach that level as a government. We have countries within the region that are really, really struggling with the fight against corruption. Look at Tanzania. Magufuli is doing enormous work. Look at countries like Rwanda. We don't want to be comparing ourselves with such kind of countries. You know, Kenya is an economic powerhouse within the region. So we should set the example. We have enough laws. Let people go to court. Let the prosecution present watertight evidence. And let's see convictions. Not just small fish, but let's see big sharks being convicted in this in our courts.
Okay, and you've mentioned about the presidential aspect, how he's been, of late he's been coming out very strongly, repeatedly. Over the years, he's condemned corruption many times, but this time he's a bit more vocal and more firm about it. We're actually seeing what seems to be actual repercussions of that. You know, he's asked people to step down. What does this mean? Does this add the confidence? Does it necessarily add to confidence of investors, or will they still have a wait-and-see approach and see whether it's just another tough talk season and nothing much?
You know, I think then the president ought to have begun by change in our social values as Kenyans, because corruption is not just at the highest level, although the fish starts rotting from the head, but corruption runs down to the lowest, at the lowest level of the pyramid. You'll go to a government office, you want services, which are supposed to be public services, as in that's why they are called public officers, to be served by a public officer. But before this officer serves you, he wants to take you round till you realize in your mind that this guy wants something to facilitate. You go to a chief's office, you just want a letter or just a rubber stamp. They will take you round in circles till you give something, you know. So there's this mindset that before a public officer serves you, then you need to cough something. And this goes down to the lowest, as I said, to the lowest level of the pyramid. So the war against corruption need to start from the change in mindset as Kenyans. What do we do when an officer who is supposed to serve you freely asks you for something they call facilitation fee, or to facilitate the process, you know? As a Kenyan, you need to take that responsibility to know that this person is killing me and killing the economy, and report the person to the relevant authorities. Because when you hide and you say, okay, I just wanted my things to run smoothly, I didn't want to engage in this kind of, you know, sluggish, and I wanted the documents so fast, so I had to give him something. You know, you are caught on with a traffic offense on the road. Then a police officer comes. Instead of this police officer, you know, taking you through the normal legal traffic procedures, you know, you'll start negotiating at an officer, how much do you want? We just finish. I don't have time. I'm rushing to work, you know. Then we'll start now bargaining on how much you are going to give that police officer, you know. So it's about mindset. I like and I appreciate the effort that the president is giving in, the pronunciation against corruption, and all the stands warning that is giving to the public officers. But again, want to see action, Kenyans want to see this thing reflected in what in action. Want to see conviction, want to see big fish being caught, want to see all those things. By doing so now, it will start building investor confidence. People will say, okay, now in Kenya you just do business without, you can invest, you can, like in Rwanda, I'm told you can register a company within a day and you have all the documentation and you start your business, Those are the ease of doing business. That's what matters a lot. And also sealing loopholes of where this money is being, siphoned. We thought IFMIS was going to address this kind of issues, but from what we are seeing, IFMIS actually accelerated the level at which money is being swindled. But the good thing with IFMIS is that it leaves footprints. Yes. So you are able to follow, you are able to see who did what at what level and where the money went. So again, it's both the ends. It gives confidence and also it helps to track the movement of this money.
Okay, and now we are seeing a lot of conversation about the Mwananchi also having a part to play. President Kenyatta during his Madaraka Day speech also alluded to the same, saying that it has seeped, corruption that is, has seeped into different parts of the economy. Talk about teachers, doctors, journalists as well, people who are just having corrupt dealings in one way or another, using some kind of whatever influence, whatever power they have to kind of swindle the other person. Are we saying that it's almost standard that in every trade, there's a certain level, a cost for corruption which is factored in?
Yeah, and that cost of corruption done, it is passed on to the consumer. You see, when an investor wants to invest, and he had a budget of, let's say, 20,000 or 20 million, and then that was the cost of setting up that investment. And due to corruption, the cost of that investment raises to around 50 million. This investor will have to pass on the cost to the common mwananchi. And it's the common mwananchi who suffers through rise in... we can talk about how corruption manifests itself. And one of the cases is the rise in cost of living. At the moment, Kenyans are crying about, being unable to afford basic needs, basic, things that should be easy to access. Most Kenyans are not able even to access food, a 3-meal food, It has become so expensive, among other things. But if we can nip the loopholes and address cases where people are known to be involved, and, although corruption manifests itself in both government and private sector, but it's so high in government institutions to the extent that when you see a public officer, you don't look at him or her as somebody who is supposed to serve you. You look at him as somebody who wants to swindle from you. And when he does that, the mindset is now geared towards the illusion that getting services within government, you must part with something, you must corrupt, you must bribe. And that's how we have come to be as Kenyans. So the eventual cost of corruption is passed onto mwananchi. Look here, Dan. When we do let's look at the infrastructural development. When we are doing construction of road, then an investor corrupts his way. The cost of doing that road, maybe let's give a figure of, let's say, 1 billion. Then
okay. Just before you continue, I'd just like to interrupt you for just a bit because we want to cross. Coming back to our conversation about the economy and in terms of the corruption and how it's eating into it. As we close, because time is far much gone, what do you think is the way forward in terms of trying to ensure that the economy can still stand? I know we have a very resilient economy. It has been given the praises over the years. But what needs to be done to ensure that the economy does not get demolished by corruption? Because yesterday, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Bob Godek, said that the corruption can actually destroy Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyattas had said the same thing. So what do we need to do to shield our economy from that?
Dan is very correct that the current level of corruption can really, really bring this country down if we are not keen and if all Kenyans don't take serious responsibility to know that by engaging in corruption, you are actually bringing yourself down. There are some, when you look at the corruption indices that have been produced by several researchers, you realize that we have these kind of professionals like the Kenya police have been high on corruption index. The journalists, teachers, have also been mentioned as part of the people who engage in corruption. But that's at the lowest level of corruption. Most of the corrupt deals mostly operate within the procurement departments of governments, and we need to start this conversation of why procurement departments have been a bedrock of where corruption thrives. And if we start that deliberation, then we look at what the steps that the president is doing to ensure that procurement officers, senior procurement officers and accountants are vetted afresh through this lie detector, then we see that we are going in the right direction. So to caution our economy from a possible collapse as a result of corruption, as Kenyans, we need to know that when we do projects, especially long-term projects, infrastructural projects, let's have quality services, quality workmanship. Let's build, put up structures that can live for generations, not take a bribe, then, we make things that will collapse in the next 1 year. Then we go back and start doing the same thing. We can borrow notes from what the former president, Mwai Kibaki, did. During his regime, we see the Thika Superhighway is still there as a beacon of what the infrastructural, development that he was focusing on. So we want to see during Uhuru's regime, he's focusing on four pillars. But those 4 pillars are very wide. I thought the president would have just picked one thing and lived with it and ran with it so that it can help to rebuild our economy. But sincerely speaking, this the situation we are in as a country is very alarming. The corruption as now is not. We talk about corruption, but now we need to start talking about economic crimes, because these are issues of economic sabotage. It's no longer about corruption, it's theft. So let's use correct terminologies to refer to these people. These are looters, and if you loot something from somebody, or you are bringing that person down, and that's what these people are doing to this country. So first, let us look at the loopholes. Let us seal the issues of tax evasion and tax collection, revenue collection. Let there be a transparent and meticulous system under which all collected tax are used for the intended purposes, because there is so much that get lost along the way in terms of tax collection, revenue collection, and its application. So we need to seal those loopholes. Kenya has a very huge economy, and if you look at per GDP or per capita income, you realize that Kenya is ranging, is one of the, in fact, we are now moving from the least or developing country to middle income countries. So we have a very resilient economy, and the crude oil that the president just flagged off the other day should now help this country to spur our economy further. But that can only be done if there's transparent, there's good governance, we have proper systems in place to ensure that our moral system is also, our moral value is also geared towards developing our economy, as opposed to the current system where we glorify theft, we glorify people who have stolen, they come back and we elect them into leadership. How do you expect somebody who has thrived on corruption to provide quality governance on our resources? So let us also go for leadership that is people-driven, leadership that is focused to utilize the resources for the betterment of the entire society, for the betterment of Kenyans, other than going for leaders who have very checked track record in terms of corruption.
Okay, just in closing and very briefly, Are we saying that if we were to deal with corruption, we definitely have goods and services being much cheaper?
Sure, Dan, because that's the eventual cost of corruption. If corruption can be dealt with properly and we have services, people are paying for the services that they're supposed to get, and we produce goods that, that are cheaper to be purchased by common mwananchi, then I'm sure the cost of living is going to go significantly down, and as opposed to what we are having at this moment, because the cost of living has gone too high and most Kenyans are not able to afford basic needs.
All right, thank you very much, Bernard Wakoli, who's a political economist and governance expert, for speaking to us and shedding some light in light of the corruption cases that are ongoing all over the place, be it in the courts, at the investigative agencies, and wherever else it is, and which we as NTV have been following up and continue to follow up in our state of corruption coverage. And